Part 3. Unspoken chemistry. There's a moment when the air between you thickens, when his smile makes your heart race, when everything around you fades into the background and all you can feel is the pull between you two. And that's when you know you're in trouble. The question is, how much longer can you ignore what's growing between you? Sarah had always prided herself on being level-headed, careful, never getting too swept up in things she couldn't control. But lately, that control seemed to be slipping through her fingers, especially when it came to Jason. Every time they worked out together, every time he smiled at her in that way that made her stomach flutter, it got harder to deny the pull she felt between them. But Jason was always careful. He kept his distance, especially when personal topics came up. The office, he was professional, but in the gym, it was clear there was something more. Or maybe it wasn't clear at all. Was he interested? Or was she just imagining it? All Sarah knew for sure was that the tension was growing. And as much as she wanted to push it, she couldn't help but wonder what was keeping him from getting closer. This was becoming more than just a workout. It was becoming something Sarah wasn't sure she was ready for, but also couldn't walk away from. The more time Sarah spent with Jason, the more she found herself drawn to him, physically, emotionally, in ways she hadn't expected. It started out innocent enough, just shared workouts, friendly small talk, but now? It was different. Chemistry between them was undeniable. Every glance, every smile felt charged. The way he leaned in when he spoke, the way his voice dropped just slightly when he said her name, it all added up to something that felt too intense to ignore. But despite the tension between them, there was something that always held Jason back. Whenever the conversation turned to personal lives, to anything outside of the gym, he would retreat. There was always a wall. And Sarah was starting to wonder why. It was like he was letting her get close, but only just enough to leave her wanting more. And that left her in a constant state of confusion. Was he interested? Was he just being friendly? Or was there something deeper that he wasn't ready to share? The longer this went on, the more Sarah found herself tangled in her thoughts, trying to figure him out. And it didn't help that she was getting closer to him. Every workout felt like a step forward, but every conversation about their personal lives felt like a step back. Contradiction was enough to drive anyone crazy. Sarah wasn't sure what exactly had shifted. Was it the way Jason looked at her when she picked up heavier weights? Or was it the way his hand brushed against hers just for a moment after she'd finished a set? Whatever it was, she couldn't deny it. Chemistry between them was building. Each session seemed to bring them closer, yet further apart. One evening, after an especially intense workout, Sarah couldn't help but notice how exhausted Jason looked. His usual confidence was replaced by a hint of fatigue, a weariness that hadn't been there before. They were both stretching out, trying to cool down, when an awkward silence settled between them. Jason rubbed the back of his neck, glancing around the gym before looking back at her. "Tough workout today," he said, his voice tight, as if he was trying to keep his usual calm demeanor intact. Sarah nodded, but the silence lingered, heavier than before. She could feel it, the tension in the air. It wasn't just the workout. It was something else. Something unspoken but so obvious. But neither of them said anything. Jason broke the silence with a casual shrug, as if trying to brush it off. "Yeah, it's been one of those days," he added, his smile a little forced. "Long day at the office. You know how it goes." Sarah could sense that he was trying to distance himself again, pushing whatever was bubbling between them back down. But something about the way he looked at her when he said it caught her off guard. His eyes seemed to linger on her a little longer than usual, and for a split second she thought she saw something deeper in them, something raw, something vulnerable. But just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, replaced by his usual guarded expression. "Right," Sarah replied, trying to act normal, though she felt anything but normal. "Long days happen. But Jason had already turned away, wiping down his equipment, clearly ready to call it a night. Sarah stayed there for a moment, her mind racing. What had just happened? Was it just exhaustion, or had something more serious shifted between them? The next day at work, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jason seemed like his usual self, focused, distant, but there was something about the way he avoided looking at her that made her wonder if he was pulling away. He didn't greet her as warmly as he usually did. He didn't make the small comments that had been so common between them in the gym. Instead, he seemed guarded. Maya, ever the observant one, noticed the change immediately. During their lunch break, as Sarah nursed her coffee, Maya leaned in, studying her carefully. "So, what's going on with you and Jason?" Sarah didn't know how to answer. She wasn't sure herself. "Nothing, I guess. Just a workout, you know? We're just working out." Maya raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "Come on, I know you better than that. There's something there, Sarah. I can see it. You've been looking at him differently, and I'm pretty sure he's been looking at you the same way." Sarah sighed, feeling the weight of Maya's words sink in. "Yeah, but it's not that simple. Every time we get close, he pulls away. And when I try to get to know him, get past that wall he's put up, he shuts down." Maya's expression softened as she thought for a moment. "You know, I think I might know what's going on with him." Sarah looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Maya paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "Jason's not exactly an open book. He's been hurt before, probably more than once, and he's not someone who shares easily. I think his emotional distance is a defense mechanism. He's not used to letting people in, especially not someone like you." Sarah's mind was spinning. So, was she misreading him? Was Jason's distance a sign that he wasn't interested, or was it something deeper, something tied to past experiences that had nothing to do with her? For the first time, Sarah began to wonder if she'd been too focused on trying to figure Jason out, instead of understanding the reasons behind his actions. Could it be that the walls he'd built were more about protecting himself than about keeping her at arm's length? As Sarah walked back to her desk, her thoughts were heavy with what Maya had said. Could Jason really be hiding behind those walls because of past pain? Was his emotional distance something she should try to understand instead of take personally? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that there was so much about Jason she didn't know. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about her at all. Maybe it was about him and the pieces of his past that he wasn't ready to share. But that didn't change the fact that every time they were together, she felt that undeniable chemistry. Every moment in the gym, every smile, every look, it all pulled her in deeper. And the question now was, could she keep pushing past his walls, or would he continue to keep her at a distance? And if she did manage to break through, what would she find on the other side? For Sarah, the journey was just beginning. The tension between them wasn't going away. It was only growing stronger. And she couldn't help but wonder how long they could both ignore what was building between them. If you're hooked, make sure you subscribe to find out what happens next, because the story isn't over yet.